are theory courses. And in these 6 theory courses, this is the first course that you'll be dealing with, which introduces you to journalism and mass communication. Um, I understand that some of you would also belong to the industry, and maybe you would be working in communications departments of various corporations and government organizations, so on and so forth. So these are just the basics for those who do not have much idea about how we look at communications or what communication experts are supposed to view communication as. So, for those who are already into this industry, they will find this a kind of revision, or this would be a kind of polishing of concepts that you already have some idea about. So, while we begin with it, this block that I'm going to deal with today has 4 units. The first one deals with communication concepts and process. The second one talks about the models of communication. The third one talks about the theories, and the fourth gives you a small glimpse about communication research principles. So, being the first and the foremost course of this master's program, this gives you a small glimpse into all the various aspects, all the various disciplines that mass communication opens your scope to. So while we deal with, on a very, let me say, on a broad level, we're going to look at various aspects of this, which, like, this block is going to talk about communication concepts. There would be another block which would be talking about radio and television and how it grew, and how vernacular press has been important in Asia and India. And then we'll also be looking at the development of such kind of vernacular press or language journalism in the country. We'll also be looking at radio and television development. And then the third block of this is going to deal with the ownership patterns in electronic media, in print media, as well as in various corporate organizations wherever there are communication departments. So, and primarily, since we have written this unit from the point of view of the Indian audiences, this will also give you a small glimpse from the Indian perspective, as in what are the various Indian government media organizations, and then we can probably discuss what are the contemporary government media organizations in your particular countries. And then there is one unit which is exclusively dedicated to the educational media, and how education, the sector of education, has started making use of media per se, especially in the post-pandemic scenario. And IGNU, the university that you've decided to join to pursue this program, has been doing this since 1986, when it was conceived, when the inception of the university took place. We had a satellite television and we had a radio through which we would carry out counseling, since this was an altogether a distance university. So post pandemic, what we see Okay, I guess there was a slight disturbance in with the network. The weather here is extremely bad, so that could be the cause. So we're back. So this unit is going to talk about the educational media, and then we will have another block, the fourth block of this course, which we will look at in the fourth session that we have, which will talk about the integrated marketing communications. It talks about those disciplines of mass communication which lead you to various kinds of industries, say for example advertising or events management or public relations and corporate communications. And there would be one unit that would talk primarily on the integrated marketing communications approach of this, and how mass communication plays an important role in IMC. So this is a brief overview of this course. And today we begin with the first block of this, and we talk about the communication concepts and processes. So while we discuss communication concepts, we need to know and we need to understand what is the need for communication. So this is something, which is very basic. This is something that you would find also in the material that would be you would find uploaded on the LMS. And we would see that how communication has grown over a period of centuries altogether. So we know that communication is something whenever we are exchanging experiences amongst one another. Like say, for example, in these classes that we will hold, the 4 blocks that we will hold, we will also try and figure out how culturally your countries are different from India and all our countries are different from one another, and how communication takes place in various cultures and what are the various perspectives that people share. And you would appreciate the fact that communication is considered just as important as food, as important as all the various basic needs that human beings require. So the need of communication has been persistent, more so in the era of technology, because here there is greater direction which is required by people in general. Only when we know what we are communicating, how we are receiving, what we decide to believe, what kind of perception are we forming after exposure to certain kind of communication, are we able to make a sound judgment of what we should negate and what we should accept. Considering that, it is important to understand what is the process of communication. So when I talk about the process of communication, I discuss in terms of the encoding decoding process, which is greatly a brain a process that is involved in our minds. So there are 4 things: the source, the message, the channel, and the receiver. Source is, say, for example, in this case it is me, because I am talking about communication, the concepts of communication, and how it has started playing a significant role more than even more than before. And then we talk about the message that we try to communicate. We also talk about the receiver and how you are understanding it, or how you are decoding the message that I'm sending across to you. And of course, the channel. Here, the channel is technology and the language which is common to all of us. Since all of us understand English, and because I am communicating in English, you are able to understand or make meaning out of it. So this process of communication is largely a cyclic process. Because it is cyclic, there is always an element of feedback which is involved in it, because we encode a message. Like when I'm explaining communication, I am thinking simultaneously and I am encoding the ideas in my brain, putting it into my language, and then it is getting across to you. While you are receiving this communication, you are free to accept or reject the ideas that we are discussing, and probably you are free to raise a concern that this is where I do not agree, or this is where I think it is different. So that is the feedback which I receive. Hence, this process of communication is a cyclic process. So, having said that, we also need to touch upon what is effective communication. When I say effective communication, as long as there is no primary, or the premise that we are talking on is the same, which means what I am saying is exactly what you're understanding. As long as it is that, the communication is supposed to be effective. And wherever there is a difference in meaning at the receiver's end, the effectiveness of communication starts eroding, or it starts decreasing. So effective communication is very, very important. When we talk in terms of international, intercultural communication, there may be certain barriers which may not exist in our context, because our language and technology we are all familiar with, the teacher as well as the taught. But otherwise, there can be certain barriers to communication in different areas and in different contexts, in different communities or societies. When we talk about that, um, some basic things could be when you are communicating at a wrong time, when a person is not ready to receive the content that you're giving. So wrong timing or an inconvenient timing can be a barrier to communication. Then the second thing is if the message is distorted. Distorted means maybe the person is not able to make meaning out of it. So if I am, say, for example, using extremely difficult words or very different vocabulary than what is generally in use in spoken language, then it'll be difficult for people to follow what I'm saying. agree, accept, or reject, or give a feedback on the ideas that I am bringing up to you. So, also, like they say in journalism, if you throw your reader to the dictionary, the reader throws you out of the job. So it is quite similar to that. As long as the communication is not distorted, that means there is not a changing meaning of the message, the communication is effective. But wherever the communication is distorted, it will become a barrier. Then the third thing, of course, is information overload. When I say information overload, there may not be, it is not possible that at all times people are ready to listen to you or people are ready to accept your views or your opinions. There can be a barrier every time you know we're discussing a concept, because already somebody could be overloaded with lots of other informations, problems, things that require urgent attention. It could be either of these, but then all of them become barriers in effective communication. So these are the basic ones. Other than this, there are some technical barriers in terms of vocabulary. Like I just said, whenever we use extremely difficult words that people do not understand or people cannot make meaning out of them, it becomes a barrier to communication. And then the second thing is semantics. Now, can anybody tell me what is the meaning of semantics? Semantics
Yes.
mean? Yes,
Yes.
please.
Semantics is simply terminologies known to a group of people or a particular group of individuals who use that to communicate to themselves.
Okay. And I also see a message from Kavish who says that when the message is not clear, all right. So whenever the meaning of the message is distorted, that is a semantic barrier. So that is another thing, and the most important thing, because a lot of times, at least in India, what we view is what is said is not exactly what is meant. So there are politicians, there are leaders who would say things differently and would mean things differently, which becomes a communication barrier. Then, other than this semantic barrier and the technical barrier, we also have a number of psychological barriers, which have an important role to play whenever we're talking about effective communication. So, say, for example, noise is one thing. Now, noise is not only in terms of technical noise, that maybe your network connection isn't very well, so you are facing that noise. No, it's not just that. Whenever your head is filled with something that you deem more important, or something from which you cannot control or resist thinking about, that too is noise, because um, it is disturbing the flow of communication which is coming to you from my end. So that is one. The second is perception set differences. Now, all of us have grown up in different kind of environments. We are culturally different. We have different set of values. We have been brought up differently. We've seen different experiences. We've had different experiences in life, which decides our attitude or perception set. So perception set, the word means that the perception which has been set in a certain manner. So perception set differences over a period of time. There are individuals who build this kind of a perception set. For example, when somebody decides to believe in certain kind of advertisements that claim about a certain product as their experience with it could be positive. So that is why I would maybe have a repeat purchase. I'll go for purchasing that product one more time. Why? Because I found it good. I found it better than the rest. So this is the kind of perception I have made about this brand or about this product. Alternatively, there can also be others who may not believe that such messages can be trusted or can be believed. So the same experiences, the same product or the same brand can have different kind of experiences for different people. So this is the difference of perception set between people, and this can also become a psychological barrier, because I have had some negative experiences with certain brands. I would prefer not to pay attention to their communication, not to make a purchase decision favoring their product, etc. Then the next thing is lack of trust and jealousy. That is something very common amongst human beings, and that is one reason why people would not, a certain communication may not have the desired effect on the audiences. And then one thing is information filtering. Now, information filtering happens at the end of the receivers. Like when we discuss another unit in this block, which talks about the theories of communication. We will be talking about how people are open to receiving certain kinds of information as compared to, in contrast to other kinds of information which they might not be very happy receiving. So there is a certain kind of exposure that we are happy, or we readily expose our brains to, our minds to. On the other hand, there can be some more kind of information that we would like to perceive, we would like to give it a thought, and maybe another kind of information that would be retained in our minds. And this is all going to be in coherence with our pre-existing attitudes, with our beliefs, with our the way we think, or the experiences with which we've been brought up. So this is called information filtering. Based on this, we either receive a communication or we reject it. So this is the basic of what communication is, and what are the various barriers of communication, and what is effective communication, what is the process of communication. Having dealt with this, we all know about it, but it is just worth mentioning that there are various forms of communication as well, like intrapersonal, interpersonal, group, and mass. And I do believe that all of you must be knowing about it. But yet, for the sake of this, when we talk about intrapersonal communication, can somebody tell me what is intrapersonal communication? Can somebody just exemplify an example of intrapersonal, please?
Well, interpersonal communication is like me speaking with myself, like just having thought, like, can I can I attend this class today, or shouldn't I attend this class today or not? Like this is an example of intrapersonal communication. That's me communicating with myself, like within myself.
All right, perfectly fine. And I can also read a message from Kavish, who says that when somebody talks to oneself, yes, that is intrapersonal communication. And what about interpersonal communication?
Interpersonal
Interpersonal
communication.
communication.
Well, interpersonal communication has to do with communication between two persons, like me speaking with you right now, like minus the other members of
Mm-hmm.
the
Yeah, all right,
that.
perfectly fine. Yes. So when the exchange of ideas takes place between two people, it is interpersonal communication. An example is television. No, television is an example of mass communication, where the sender does not know who are the faceless audiences. They do not know. Yes, interpersonal communication exists between two people, correct? So whenever two people are talking face to face, or face to face communication in itself is called interpersonal communication. And a group communication, somebody who can tell me what is a group communication?
Okay, like if all of us now be discussing in this class, that's an example of communication, like communication
Yeah.
between different more than two people that are not as large as that will be, will be in mass communication.
Uh-huh. So when a person is talking to a few people, that is a group communication. Kavish, not exactly to an audience, because an audience can be a large number of audiences also. So when Prime Minister Modi addresses people in election rally, that is not a group communication. Group communication is when you are in a position to talk to people one on one and you can address their concerns. So a limited number of audiences, so that is called group communication. And mass communication, when we have a large number of audiences who are geographically apart in time and space, like the example Osvaldo gave, television. So when a newsreader is speaking, you know who the newsreader is. The newsreader does not know whether it is somebody in Africa who's listening to the news, or in India, or in Europe. Where are they? And they don't even understand who these people are. They have no clarity on that. So that is mass communication. Having said that, can somebody tell me which is the most effective kind of communication amongst these four? Interpersonal, intrapersonal, group, and mass communication. Which is the most effective one? Interpersonal says Kavish. Yes, please. You put up your hand. Abu
Yes,
Bakr.
I will go with yes. Personal communication is actually the most effective form of communication.
Interpersonal. All right. Christiana.
Okay, I will also go with interpersonal communication because this one you have face-to-face encounter with the one you are communicating with, and then you get a direct feedback from the person. So I will consider interpersonal as the most effective. Thank you.
Perfect. Bazooka.
Yeah, I think it depends. It depends on the objective you want to achieve. So, for instance, if you want to reach out to a number of people at the same time, then you go for mass communication. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
if
Mm-hmm.
you are you are targeting few individuals, then you go for interpersonal communication. And if it's a self debate, interpersonal communication, you alone. So it depends on the objectives which you basically want to achieve. Thank you.
All right. Now, what you just said was it depends on the objective of communication and depends on the tip of message that you want to send. All right. When my question was, which is the most effective kind of communication? The most effective kind of communication is the one where the person who's listening to you or the people who are listening to you get the message exactly the way you intend it to be. There is no miscommunication, there is no misunderstanding, there is also scope of clearing if there is any kind of misunderstanding there. So the best form of communication is interpersonal communication. Why? Like Kavish said, because you get immediate feedback in it, as compared to all other kinds of communication where you do not get immediate feedback or you do not get an effective feedback. So it is not only the objective of communication. There, when we talk about objectives of communication, then we make selection of certain kind of media. How do we communicate? To who do we communicate? Say for example, if it is the rural audience as compared to the the modern lifestyle people who are always in a hurry, who do not have the time for a lot of conversations, as compared to it when you're talking to housewives, when you're talking to doctors, when you're talking to engineers. So everybody is a specific kind of an audience. So it is not just the objective is a different thing altogether. The simple question was, which is the most effective? So the most effective always is interpersonal, because it allows you direct feedback which you can take and accordingly address the queries or address that feedback. So now, having said that, we need to also understand how communication media developed. When we talk about the development of communication, we need to go back to the pre-agricultural societies and the agricultural societies, the industrial societies, and the information society, which we are having now. So, pre-agricultural, once upon a time, there were kings, and obviously, who had a better kingdom, who had a larger army, was the more stronger king. Then on, we came to pre-agricultural societies where there were small communities that existed, and people who had a lot of cattle or had more number of women, more number of people with them were supposed to be stronger. Then came the agricultural society where people were practicing agriculture. So whoever had a greater amount of land and had a greater produce, had more number of oxen, were the people who were more important. Please give me a minute. So I'm back. We were talking about the agricultural societies. After agricultural societies came the industrial society. We all know and understand the industrial revolution that take place, where the Marxism and the Marxist ideas that came. This was also the time when publication through Gutenberg's Bible started happening. So all of it, once we started printing, once we had the Bible printed in the form of a book, and there were copies of it available for people at large, media started proliferating there. So industrial societies was one. And after this, the fourth stage was the information society, when information was power. So we were talking of information superhighways, we were talking of the World Wide Web, And after 2000, from 2000 to 2012, there was there was the stage where internet was developing, where people were thinking and understanding, assuming how this can be a part of our lives and how it can make our lives simpler, better, more technically advanced. And then on, we came to a time when we're talking of social media after 2012 precisely, when other than coming to a 5G or a 4G, we haven't advanced much, but those things have entered into our lives in such a big way that social media has started having a lot of other things associated with it, in both positive as well as negative. So we also have cyber crime, but we also have certain kind of advantages like education finds its advantage here. So you can get trained from the best faculty of the best institutions around the world. And at the same time, somebody can cheat you when it comes to mobile banking and stuff like that. So this is how communication media has developed over the years. While we are talking of communication media and information superhighway, we also need to understand that these all media, they started, despite the fact that they've started building up from the times when books started getting printed, but then newspapers proliferated into magazines, people, because people wanted to have a more succinct idea of what they were reading about. It was not just the 5 Ws and 1 H. They wanted to get the details of it. They wanted to understand how this has an impact on their economy, polity, and society. And then came the radio. You would all know of the the war of the world, and the way this radio drama was played in the United States, and a lot of people fled from their homes thinking that aliens had attacked the earth. And that is when a lot of communication theories also started promulgating, because people were thinking that audiences are lame ducks and you could do whatever you would want to do to them. Because after this, this entire play was there on radio in the United States, a lot of people fled their places, and a lot of people were found in bunkers, and they would hoard things to eat for the next few months because they thought that Martians have attacked the earth. So that was the time of radio. And then we came to the time of television. Television was like, it was in India, it was the year 1975-76 when television entered India. And in most developing societies, be it India or the Africa, the idea was to bring about development. That was the basic idea with which TV entered these countries. Say, for example, if I talk in the context of India, we are greatly an agrarian economy. So a lot of people thought during that time that once television comes, the farmers will be able to benefit a lot from it because their problems could get solved. Those were the times when we were not very precise with how the weather would be, or whether how much rains will we get this year. So a lot of there were a lot of ways how television could have helped. But as it turns out, TV only ended up being an entertainment medium. So the idea with which TV came to India was not really, promulgated. With it was not really met successfully. And of course, TV. While we talk of television, before that, cinema had entered the country. Cinema was more in the form of talkies. So we had silent films, then we had films which were more like projections. We had a projector and there was a big piece of cloth on which the images would get projected, and that is how people would. It became a way of associating with your community, because everybody would sit together and watch that cinema. From that time to, of course, today we are on the OTT, on the verge of bursting into OTT platforms. There are humongous numbers of them in the country. And then we also have folk media, because since we're talking of all sorts of traditional media, we should also not forget folk media. Because with all of you who would be working with NGOs would understand that if you want to talk to the rural community, it is the best way to talk to them, to contribute to their lives through folk media, because folk is something that they understand very well. So while we talk of folk media, we talk of folk theater, we talk of folk songs, folk dances, and these are the ones that come up in the languages of the communities which we're talking about. And it comes up with all those stories which have existed in their societies from times immemorial, and things that people relate to, their value system. So folk media, in fact, is a very strong way of communicating to any audiences, because you are talking in their language, taking into account their customs, their rituals, their uh, whatever they believe in, their value system. So that is folk media. And then of course internet, and I don't think I need to touch more upon internet, because we all know how important a role it plays in our lives today. Having touched this, we need to understand the conventional view of mass communication, because here we are talking of traditional media, we're talking of the folk, and we're talking of the new media, which is no more new, which has been with us for over a decade now. And the contemporary view of mass communication brings to us the concept of convergence, whereby all sorts of technologies have amalgamated into one. So, like earlier, we had a pager or only a mobile or a computer. Today, everything, all devices have become one device. So, you're also banking with your mobile. You're also talking with your mobile. Your mobile is also your computer, so on and so forth. In this entire process of convergence, what is important to be understood is the media economics, how economics has a role to play, and what are the subsidiary companies, subsidiary industries that have come up. So, when we talk of 4G, 5G, the telecommunication industry, or the fake news and the industries that are into the business of busting fake news, and then there are other industries who come up with these ideas of whether whatever has been busted is correct or not correct. So all this media economics is also, focusing on various kind of innovations. So this is the contemporary view which you all need to understand, and once you go through the study material, I think it'll be amply clear to you. Plus you would have your own ideas to, merge with these and be able to put up with this. Then we also talk of media and social construction of reality. Now, this is something which is important, because um, when we talk about the increasing rate of cybercrime, or when we talk about how people people are being affected by what is being put on social media, it is important to understand that reality is not what is real. Reality is what is perceived, and what is perceived is what media is giving to us, serving us in a platter. The way media wants us to think about anything. So this is the kind of social reality that we're talking about. What we say we do not believe, and what we believe is not the reality. So what is real? We absolutely do not know. It is simply a media created, concocted version of reality that is served to us and which we believe to be true. So ideally, how social construction of reality is taking place and how it is actually different from what is happening in the real world is something which needs to be pondered over. And a very small and a good able way of doing it is, in case, I mean, I don't know if somebody finds that kind of time, but if you expose yourself to only media created reality, say for example heavy viewers of media, people who are on social media and watch television or ott platforms for, say for example, 6 hours a day for a month or 2 months, and after that how do their ideas about little things in life change? Right, that is one action research that you could do amidst yourselves. And as compared to this, for people who maybe are not able to, don't find time for more than half an hour to spend on media. Now when I say media, it also means Facebook, it also means YouTube, it means every kind of media that you're using, or you're reading e-newspapers and stuff like that. So if you're not finding enough time for that, and if you are into the real world, the realities and the way you look at reality will be very different for these two individuals. So this is the social construction of reality that we are talking about. So the portrayal of moral and cultural values and norms in society is very, very important to understand. And when these social norms and moral and cultural values, societal values have been predefined by the media, then it is giving us a different viewpoint of reality, a reality which may not be real, a reality which is only perceived. Like when we talk about, say, for example, when we talk about needs, one is the perceived need, one is the felt need, and one is the real need. When we say perceived need, it could be a person supposing that maybe I need an iPhone, that is my perceived need. But my real need could be that I need a laptop so that I can access all the e-resources of the best libraries of the country or the world of Asia or whatever, right? And so this is my real need. So felt need could be what media feels I need. Maybe media thinks that it is a Sunday evening and I need a new web series. So that is a felt need. Now, this is the difference between felt, perceived, and real need. Okay. So here, when we are sure about our needs and we look at the way media creates a reality for us, like whatever the feeds that come on a Facebook, just look at that, or whatever is suggested to you on YouTube or on Pinterest. Are you always into it? Maybe, okay, I had a cousin's wedding, so I was looking for some dress designs. But then onwards, Pinterest starts pushing dress designs to me all across the year. Am I really interested? But that is the data that they have gathered about me. And that is why they push certain kind of programs, certain kind of pins to me, right? Certain kind of videos to me. So this is social construction of reality. This is media created reality. So this is something very interesting, and I wish and hope that you would read on this more so as to build a perspective for yourself, because it will help you understand how media is actually changing people's lives on a very intricate, minuscule, subtle level, things that cannot be touched. Okay. Vasoka, you have raised your hand. Is there something that you wish to ask? Okay, fine enough. So with that, we come to the end of the first unit. And next, we will be talking about models of communication. Now, you'd wonder why we're talking about models of communication. Because as communication experts, you need to know why and how we make use of. Okay, I can see. Yes, please, Mr. Vasoka. Is there something you need to say? Kindly unmute and you may ask your question.
No. I just raised it accidentally.
Okay, that's all right.
Yeah, sure.
No problem. So we're going to look at the models of communication. When we say models, we need to know why we need to understand models and what is it that it gives us. Now, we understand that communication is a very complex process. It involves many stages, many participants. It involves the formation and consumption of a message. So when communication studies are done, like researchers like us, when we do some researches in the area of communication, what we try to do is we look at a model and how that model is fulfilling the need and in a certain context of communication. So models visualize the process of communication in a certain environment and for a certain society, so that we are able to understand the communication process better. All right. So these are the ways how communication can take place. Say, for example, by means of technology. Say, for example, for the rural people who are maybe where the literacy rate is low. So on and forth. So we are going to deal with, I think, 7 or 8 models of communication, which would give you an ample idea of what is expected of a specialist of communication to understand when we talk about models. So one simple model is Harold Laswell's model. Came way back in 1948, but holds good even today because it is a very basic kind of a model. And it says, who says what, in what channel, to whom, and with what effect. So now that's the beauty of this, because it talks about the source, who says what, as in what is the message, in which channel, through which language, whether it is technology mediated, not technology mediated, how does it flow, to who is the receiver. So like my audiences at this point of time are international audiences. So who is it that I'm talking to, and with what effect? What is the kind of effect that it is having on the receiver of this communication? So this is one model of communication. Then similar to this, now this is basically focused to observe the emphasis of the effect. This was the first time that communication researchers started talking about effect that a communication can have. Because so far, like I was talking about the War of the Worlds, this radio drama that was broadcasted in the United States. Now, this was the time when people believed that people are the audiences are lame ducks and they cannot resist the effect. But after this Harold Laswell's model came, there were more number of effect studies that started happening. So what is the effect of TV on children? Or how do violent programs affect youngsters? So everywhere people started talking about effects. Even till this date, when we are researching, we are talking about social media and how social media is affecting us. Why is it that on Facebook everybody likes their lives to look like a fairy tale, which may not be really true? Which also brings me to the point that a lot of theories which have been there for times immemorial, so Shakespearean theories, they have started finding it their ground again today. Why? So say, for example, this is a theory of literature which we in mass communication don't really work on, but this is called the theory of dramaturgy. Right. So people create a drama in society. When I meet my neighbor, I meet with a smile, and I try to say that everything is amazing, hunky dory, everything's great. And maybe I just had a fight with somebody in the family. So how do you project yourself outside in the society? What kind of an image you try to make? Now, this was a theory that used to happen then, that was being talked about then in the Shakespearean era. And today, again, by once the Facebook researches started happening, people are again talking of the theory of dramaturgy. Though I am mixing theory and models a little bit, but the idea is to bring home the point that something that's dead then, because of advent of technology and because of the kind of role that technology has started playing in our lives actively, how those theories are again becoming important to us. So similarly, this model that came way back in 1948, still this is something which is being talked about because we are still researching the effects of media on various segments of population, on various target audiences. So that's one. And the second model that I'm going to talk about today is the Shannon and Weaver's mathematical model. Now, Shannon and Weaver, these were two mathematicians, in fact. And this model that they came up with was the first model that ever talked about noise. So far, nobody had talked about noise in communication. Like I said, like I just said some time back, that noise is not only the technical noise. So if the cable isn't working properly, that is not the noise that I'm looking at. We are also talking about psychological noise. So Shannon and Weaver explained this model where they said that there is a certain message which is flowing from the source of information through a transmitter and through some channel to the receiver, which is then it is quite similar to uplinking and downlinking of television waves. So like radio waves or TV programs, how do they get uplinked? Whatever is being broadcasted is being uplinked, and then it is being received at another place, and then it is being downlinked with the help of a transmitter. That is what Shannon and Weaver were essentially talking about. And they were also talking about a source of noise. Okay. So this was the mathematical model of Shannon and Weaver. When you go through this, you will be able to understand this more because there is greater detail which is mentioned for you in the unit. And it talked about three things. It talked about the technical problem, which I mentioned as a barrier of communication. It also talked about semantic problem. Like we said, that semantics means meaning. So whatever I'm saying, whether you're able to understand that or not, and the effectivity problem. The question of the message received, how it has been comprehended, whether it could be received well and it could be comprehended well, still it could not be effective. Why? So say, for example, I'm talking to some audiences and I'm talking about this disease called polio, which once existed in India, no more persisting in India. So because people anyways are aware that they have to give polio drops to children, little children, a few months old. So if I'm trying to tell them more on this, it is a total waste. It is zero. So this is why I say that a message can be received, it can be comprehended, and yet it may not be effective because people either they've already made up their minds that they don't agree with it, or they already know enough about it. So this is a zero effort on my part. So this is the effectivity problem that Shannon and Weaver talked about. The third model that I'm going to talk about is the Osgood and Schramm's model. Now, the CE Osgood and Schramm, they developed a model in which they were simply talking about the process of communication. When I talked to you about the process of communication, I said there's a sender and there's a receiver. In between is the message which is going to the receiver through some channel, and he is coming back with a feedback. So this is the only thing that they talked about, other than the fact that they said that a sender encodes a certain message in a language and then they send it to the receiver. The receiver decodes it and then interprets it, encodes another question, sends back to the receiver. So receiver becomes the sender and sender becomes the receiver. So that is one basic, simple, but beautiful model of communication that CE Osgood and Schramm had given. Other than this, they also spoke about fields of experience. So like you are communication, you're either interested in communication or you are communication practitioners yourself. We both, like this kind of target audience that I'm sitting across with, are well aware of what communication is, right? So we are all talking on the same terms, which means that our field of experience overlaps somewhere. This is what Osgood and Schramm spoke about in their model. Field of experience is those kind of experiences which you as an individual have, and the kind of experiences which I as an individual have. And there can be certain overlap in these fields of experiences, which means that there is some commonality. Like when we talk about communication, communication has some elements of commonality. Okay, communication is possible only because there are certain elements of commonality. It requires elements of commonality to occur, right? And the more the communication, the greater is this element of commonality increasing. Okay, which is quite similar to this field of experience bit. The greater the overlap, the more the communication keeps taking place, the greater the overlap between these fields of experiences between the receiver and the sender. Am I clear? Or is there a problem? You would want me to explain this again? Anybody who has a problem or would want me to explain this again can put up their hands or can write a message. All right, perfect. Looks like everybody follows this. Okay, so they were talking about the overlap of fields of their experiences, and this it's clear. All right, thank you. Then we come to the Berlow's model. Now, Berlow, again, the initial models during those times revolved only around the SMCR, source, message, channel, receiver. But what was different in this message? They broke down the source into various things. If I am the source, I am the communicator, I have certain kinds of communication skills. I have certain kinds of attitudes, certain level of knowledge, certain kind of social system of which I am a part, and a certain cultural setup of which I am a part, which belongs to me, of which to which I belong, right? So the same holds good for receiver also. So similarly, a receiver also has a certain set of communication skills, attitudes, knowledge, social system, and culture. Now, what goes on in between? What creates a difference? What makes for an impactful communication or not so effective communication are the message and the channel. So when I talk about message, it is greatly in context of the content that I'm talking about. Say, for example, here we're talking about communication. Then it is the elements of that message. Here we are having an audio-visual element. I am in real time talking to you on screen, right? So this is the element of this communication. If it was telephonic, it could have been only audio and no visual. So that's one. The treatment that has been given to a message. When I say treatment, you would all understand, say, for example, films. What kind of treatment do you give to a certain film? Yeah, if it is a dark film, or if it is a parallel cinema, if it is an alternative media cinema, what kind of, or if it is popular cinema, what is it? So the kind of treatment that you're giving to the same film can be made into a documentary and can be made into a fiction. It's only the treatment that varies everywhere. And then the structure. What kind of a structuring? If you whichever is your favorite movie that you can remember, the way the film begins to the way the director takes us along the storyline to the climax, how has it been structured? That is what we are communicating about. And then the codes, say for example, when we talked semiotics, now semiotic analysis is also an established method of research whereby we try to study signs and symbols. So in a lot of contexts, you don't really need to speak. Whatever the camera is showing is enough for the audiences to realize the impact of it, to realize the nature of it, or the way it can affect somebody, a community, anything. So that is the code. The code is the language in which something is communicated. Okay. So these are the features of the message according to Berlow's model. And then, of course, channel. When we talked about channel, Berlow spoke about the very basic ones: hearing, seeing, the five senses, five senses that human beings have. So hearing, seeing, touching, smelling, and texting, and all those things. So those were the elements of the various SMCR that Berlow defined. After this, we come to Gerbner's model of communication. Now, this was a little more complex than these basic ones because it talked about an event and how it changes its shape. So something that has taken place, we know that media is not going to cover all of it. We know that the government wouldn't want media to cover everything the way it should be covered, right? So it does not reach out to us 100% the way it happened. It has been shaped, it has been polished, it has been edited, it has been made better, or it has been killed in certain ways. So the selection, context, and availability are three things. These three things of an event decide whether it is going to be presented to an audiences or not. Maybe 100 important things happen in a day, but what is it that social media gives us, or what is it that newspapers or the mainstream media, television gives us? Not all of them. So those are selected because editors decide these are the ones that should make it to the pages of the newspapers and these should not. Why? Because this would be anti-government, so we don't want to we do not want any problems with the government. Or it could be that this is against the policy of our newspaper and hence we will not publish it. It could be anything. So selection, context, and availability of the event will decide whether it is getting covered in a specific manner or not. The second thing is the percept, the access to channels and the media control that is happening on it. So how you are perceiving it is important. How is the media perceiving it? Because media is going to bring its own perceptions to you. It is not going to bring you the reality. Yeah, like we were just talking about this media constructed reality of the society. And the third thing is this, again, certain form and content that media is going to give to a content and how it is going to be perceived by the audiences. So these are the ways, the means and controls, these are the means and controls of various dimensions. And this is the kind of relationship that is existing between the source, who you can also call the communication agent, and the communication product, the content that they're designing. And based on this, there is a perceptual dimension that gets built from the audience's point of view. What kind of relationship, and this again will be depending upon my relationship with a certain television channel. Maybe I decide to trust a certain TV channel or a social media channel more than the others because I know the rest are just blabbermouths of the government. But here is one channel who talks what is reality, and they try to bring to us the real news. So my relationship with this media will be different from the others. So perceptual dimension will be formed according to my credibility of that media. Having said that, we now come to the last two models which I'm going to discuss today. One is the Newcomb's model, which is more in terms of interpersonal relationships of people. So say for example, there are two individuals, A and B, and another thing X, which could be an object or which could be say for example, another person. It could be a cafeteria, say for example. So if I like a cafeteria X and you dislike it, we will not be friends because I would like to, it would not be a meeting point for the two of us. So Newcomb's model speaks more with respect to the relationship of two individuals vis-a-vis the third factor. Now, this third factor could be could be anything. It could be an object, it could be an idea, it could be an individual, it can be an institution. So that is what Newcomb's ABX model speaks about. And then we also have a Wesley and McLean's model, which talks about a gatekeeping function of media. We all know that multiple things happen, but only some things reach us, and that too reach in a certain form and shape and structure and character, because people know who their audiences are and they design their content according to those audiences. Then they keep getting those feedbacks, and that feedback keeps getting into the process of communication. So when they're redesigning the content, they are taking care of the feedback. So you would see that whenever you see Netflix or Amazon Prime or something like that, you would see that there are certain comments of the audiences that come. Netflix decides to address some of these comments. So after every few comments, you would find a comment from Netflix, right? And they also take their feedback and incorporate it further into their content. This is not something, and this is not a practice that is followed by all OTT platforms, but some of them do it, and hence are more successful. Why? Because they keep in touch with their audiences and they know how to design their content according to their audiences. So with that, we come to the end of this unit on communication models. The next, we have two more units to discuss, which is on the theories of communication and on research. So before we get on to that, let us take a 5-minute break. Meanwhile, you please think about all the things I've just discussed with you. And if there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. We'll be back with you in 5 minutes. Hello, everybody. I'm back, and we're going to deal with the other two units that we're supposed to be discussing today, which are the theories of mass communication and a little bit of concept of research. So, before we go on to that, is there any question that any of you has so far? Anything that you would like me to repeat or you haven't followed? All good. Right. So now we go on to understanding what are the various theories of mass communication. So, the first and the foremost, why should we study theories at all? There is so much information around us. There is so much information that we are flooded with, overloaded with day in and day out. From the time you wake up to looking at the morning newspaper to listening to the radio while you're driving, and even during the entire day till the time you go back to bed at night, there is so much information which is all around you, and all of it together makes information overload. So theories help you understand what to undermine and what not to overestimate. They tell you what to give importance to and how to believe or not believe something, how to discriminate between misinformation or disinformation and the correct information. So that is why it is necessary that we look at theories. We have some basic notional understanding of communication theories. Having said that, let us look at the classification of theories. We know that there are three or four basic classifications that we've done for master's level here. Though, of course, theories they keep getting propounded. The more the technology is entering into our lives, the more different extensions of different theories that are coming into communication as well as psychology, since communication borrows heavily from psychology, sociology, and anthropology. So all these also make a part of communication theories. When I'm talking about the classification of communication theories, I am talking about the sociological theories. I'm talking about the psychological classification of communication theories, also talking about critical and cultural theories and the Marxist theories. So, those are the four basic classifications that we've made for the master's level. When we talk about sociological theories, these are the ones that are greatly talking about sociology, culture, media, and the role that media plays in defining realities of individuals and of societies. So, the first theory we talk about is the cultivation theory. Now, George Gerbner, whose model we were just discussing, is the one who has propounded the cultivation theory. Now, his theory tries to draw an equation between various structures, between the views and behavior of the audiences. Now, this theory was advocated when, when television was new and research was being done on television. That is why this theory greatly talks about cultivation of reality when television came into being. So the idea was that TV propagates a new reality for heavy viewers of media, and television constructs a new reality for these audiences, which may have no bearing to the real world. So, what is real, like a small experiment that I was just talking to you about? So, what is real is not exactly what the television shows us. So, TV propagates this new reality, which is the creation of the television itself and is well accepted socially and culturally by the audiences. Why? Because they are heavy viewers. So they start believing that this kind of a thing exists. So, say for example, women not being treated well. Now, this may not be the reality of the community or the society, but subtly the way this is getting pushed through media content, people start believing that this is the reality of society, that we don't treat our women very well. So this theory also came with a few assumptions, like because it was talking about television, and we know that TV is something which even an illiterate can comprehend and make meaning of. So TV requires no additional resources like reading skills, Books, if you want to read books, you need to be literate, you need to be educated. But when it comes to TV, you can be you cannot know anything, you cannot be literate, and you still can watch TV and make meaning of whatever is being told to you. So TV requires no additional skills. The second thing is that TV at that time was the first medium to be shared, which was sharing public messages, and it was visually leading people to creating a kind of pseudo culture. Like I said, that TV is creating a reality which is not real, which is different from the real world. So this pseudo culture was being made by television, and there was also the mainstreaming of TV created understanding of society. Okay, so like what we said, social construction of reality by media. So that is what TV was doing, and it was creating a pseudo culture based on it. Now, this pseudo culture did not really create some attitudinal change, but it did consist of some kind of perceptual change. It created frames of reference, right? So, say for example, if you talk about in a film, who is a hero of a film? The do-gooder, the person who does everything correct and is morally upright and doesn't hurt feelings of the others. The good man is the hero. So how many times have we tried and analyzed that people have shades of gray? So a hero could be a hero at one point of time, and in another context can be a villain. So it's quite like, freedom fighters. Freedom fighters for us are freedom fighters, and for the perpetrators of crime, as we say, or the people who ruled our countries, for them, they could have been terrorists. So it is this kind of a reality that TV creates for us. So this pseudo reality which has been created, it doesn't really create an attitudinal change, because there are so many other factors, there are so many other things that come into play when we are living in a society. But they do create certain frame of reference. Who is a good man? Who is a bad man? Right? So if you say that make a perception of a villain and draw the picture of a villain, you would have certain notions about this villain, who you wouldn't have for a hero. So this is the frame of reference that has been created for audiences by television. Then the fourth thing is that the TV created reality through its content. It aims at stabilizing various cultural patterns. Okay, it tries to bring in some homogeneity. Okay, why? Because that is the only way that the content of TV or the content of media will sell to the people. If everybody starts thinking alike, it is easy for any media or any communication agent to convince them. Right. So the more the heterogeneity, the more difficult the task of communication is. Then the fifth assumption of this theory was that the observable and measurable changes that are brought about by television are very less, very, very few. And so you cannot attribute that a person has become a criminal because this person watches so many crime series on and off. Right. So the observable and measurable changes are very, very minuscule, very, very small, because there are other factors that keep intervening with the making of a personality or an attitude. Now, this was about cultivation theory. So the idea is that this active audience theory, which cultivation theory is, talks about the long-term cumulative effects that audiences may have. So say, for example, there are a lot of research, especially at this point of time, we have this professor by the name of Sonia Livingstone, who does a lot of researches on how children are affected by media and children. So when we talk about the cumulative effects, if a child is exposed to violent content over a period of time, say from the time he's 6 years old till the time he's into pre-teens or into teens, his notion of getting things done changes. He understands that, okay, once you can get violent and you can get your thing done. Right. So this kind of cumulative effects will be found in the society. Now, this is what the cultivation theory talked about. The second and more common kind of theory was agenda setting theory, which came in the year 1972. And McCombs and Shaw came up with there were two scientists. These were the people who came up with this theory of agenda setting, which says that media sets the agenda for the people, and Alternately, the media accuses people of setting its agenda. It says that we show what the people want to see. So it is not that we are setting the agenda for the people. This has been an inherent debate for a very long time now. Okay. Two important things are agenda building and framing. So what kind of frames have been set? So say, for example, there is a discussion going on prime time TV news, and there are two people, one from the opposition party and one from the ruling party. And in between, we know that the aspect ratio of TV is 4:3. So consider that, and consider that in between, in the middle, while there are, two faces propping up of the opposition party leader and the ruling party spokesperson or leader, whoever. There is the, the picture of the prime minister, obviously belongs to the ruling party, in between. So what does it portray? It portrays the aspect of television. This channel wants to portray things in the light of the way the government wants to see it. Pro-government attitude is what is depicted, right? So agenda, this is called priming, this is called framing. What is it that is there in your frames? What agenda is it talking about? Okay. And priming is, which news do you think should be amongst the top 3 news? Which is the one that you make the prime news, right? We know that the first 2 news have always been more important than the rest, because these are also the news before which, or intervening them, there is no ad break. Ad breaks come only after 2 or 3 news items have been done. So that is called priming. So priming and framing are 2 other aspects of agenda setting theory. So this is something on which multiple researches have been done in the past, and still people do work on it whenever they're talking in terms of social media as well. And this is about it. The third thing is the uses and gratification theory. Uses gratification, as we all understand, certain gratifications, what is the meaning of gratification? Satisfaction. Certain satisfaction that we achieve by making use of media. Now that could be television, that could be OTT, that could be any kind of media that you can think of. So what kind of uses? Okay, I have a question here which says, how can framing and priming theory be used in case of radio or newspaper? Yeah. When we talk about radio, when we talk about priming, which kind of radio news is being put up at the, first and foremost? So obviously, okay, in India, we have one channel which is most often listened to and is government owned, as compared to the other FM channels which only have music running on them. So when we talk about framing and priming, we are talking in, okay, when you talk in terms of newspaper, it is about which is the front page story, which is the story that bears a visual, which is a story that bears some bullet points, those nuggets, small nuggets, or which is the story, say for example, some crime has taken place somewhere. So by information nuggets have been given about them, or some line drawings, infographics, which you call. So which are the stories that are depicting themselves through infographics, through pie charts? Those are the stories, obviously, because visual elements have been added to them, they have become more important. So this is the way priming is done in newspapers. And when it comes to framing, whether the same story can be written in an anti-government way in one newspaper and in a pro-government way in another newspaper. So what is it which you are making the agenda for the people to discuss? If the largest circulated dailies or the largest listened to radio channels are talking a certain perspective, that is obviously the perspective which the people are listening to the max. Why? Because these are the largest circulated ones or the largest listened to radio channels, right? So this is how priming and framing is done in all other media. I hope I'm clear. Okay, so coming back to uses and gratification. Now, uses gratification is also called a limited effects theory. Why? Because like I was talking about the War of the Worlds, this play that was put up on the US radios everywhere. Slowly, people started realizing that media is not a magic wand. It is not something that can create the kind of effect that it wants all the time. It doesn't happen. It has limited effects. Why? Because there are other factors, intervening factors in a society for any individual. So users gratification largely talks on that basis. The what kind of users do we put media to? I am on Facebook for 15 minutes because I just like to know what my contacts, what my friends are doing, who's done what, which research, who has done, who's written a new book, who's gone to a new place, whatever be my liking. Right? So that is the kind of satisfaction, being in touch, not missing out on people's lives, is why I am on Facebook. So I am putting Facebook to that kind of use. Of course, Facebook in me finds an audience which it is making free use of, because Facebook is not paying me to watch it, to spend time on it. Nevertheless, because I am deriving certain kind of satisfaction by being on it for free, I'm becoming its what data for it. So this is users gratification. Then the next theory we'll be touching upon is dependency theory. Yes. Now this dependency theory is something that Melvin D. Fleur came up with. This was a social scientist who said that people who are heavy viewers of media, they become dependent on media. So there were a few assumptions that he made, and I will explain each of them to you. The first one says that the power or influence of mass media depends on the relationship between that media and the social system. Media is a part of the social system. So what kind of credibility, what kind of relationship does it enjoy with that social system, with its audiences, is the power of that media. Okay. The second thing it said was whether media is able to exercise influence to alter the beliefs and behavior of the audiences is decided by the degree of dependence. How much do I depend? If I'm a farmer, how much do I depend on certain radio channel to get the weather forecast? Yeah. So that is my dependence will decide how important a relationship I have with this medium. So whether I'm able to exercise the influence uh, by altering the beliefs and behavior of the audiences or not is depending upon the credibility that I enjoy with my audiences. Okay. The third thing, the dependence of media is at multiple levels in a modern society, like to understand the outside world. How are things between Ukraine and Russia these days? What kind of an impact does it have on my economy in India? To find meaning, whether when we want to understand something. So say, for example, big data and data analytics is generating a lot of jobs these days. A lot of people like to study courses on AI and machine learning and stuff like that. So where is the meaning out of it? What meaning can I make out of it? How is it altering my reality? Having a Siri at home or having something like that at home, how is it altering my reality is something that I would like to know. And then the meaningful actions of a given social setup. Also to find fantasy, to find escape, to entertain myself. So those are the some of the assertions that this theory gave. And also it talked about the greater number of functions that the media can serve. So say, for example, we have become so besotted to our phones. Why? Because our phones are also our computers. They're also our phones. There are multiple functions on all in one. So our dependency on our phone is so much. We cannot imagine a day without our phone, right? So this is again, what do we say? An assertion that this theory came up with. So how many functions can you serve will also, corroborate to the strength of your relationship with the media. This is it. And this is about the sociological theories. When we talk about psychological theories, we talk of the attitudinal change theory. Now, this attitudinal change theory is the one which talks about selective exposure, selective perception, and selective retention. This is the reference of this I gave when I was talking about the models of communication, that we don't expose ourselves to everything at hand. There are some things that we expose ourselves to, and the other things we just leave out, we shun. Why? What decides our choice? Our choices are decided by our pre-existing values, beliefs, norms, our interests, how we've grown up, All those factors of our personality decide what kind of information. Why did you decide to take admission in MAJMC? Or why are you communication professionals? Why are you not engineers? Why are you not architects? Why are you not doctors? Why are you not something else? Because this is something that you found which is of greater interest to you. This is something that, leads you to thinking of newer things, having better ideas, being more creative. So those are the things that decide your selective exposure. So out of this big box of things in which has the information nuggets to which you've exposed yourself, there will be still few to which you give a thought, because you cannot give a thought to everything. You would in these counseling sessions, you would be studying about so many different subjects, but how many of them would you actually ponder over? When you go to sleep at night, what is that one point that you would remember? Or after a week, when I ask you, what are those 5 points you would remember of any subject, that any course that you have studied over the weekend? Right? So this is selective retention. So these are the processes, all three of them: exposure, perception, and retention, which will depend on our pre-existing values and beliefs. This is what the attitudinal change theory talks about. Then we also have a reinforcement theory, which was given by Joseph Clapper, and he wrote a book by the name The Effects of Mass Communication, in which he had spoken about reinforcement, how TV reinforces our beliefs, because any media cannot be separate. It is not an island all on its own. It is very much a part of the mainstream media. So it is a part of our society, it is a part of our polity, it is a part of our economy. So this reinforcement theory talks about the mediating factors, the nexus of mediating factors and influences that are operational, while media is also having its effect. This can be religion. People are, quite mad about religion. And then it can also be the cultural factors, how we've grown up, what kind of what kind of festivals we observe, what kind of beliefs we have, how do we see a certain culture culminating around us, and how we become a part of it. So all of it together has something which reinforces itself along with the effects that media has on us. So this is the reinforcement theory. And then we also have persuasion and attitude, which greatly talks about what are the various factors, like beliefs and values and motives and attitude and behavior. Those are the various key points that decide on persuasion and attitude of a person. So what do you believe, and what is the value that you carry on? How do attitudes differ? Like, it is different to have an impression, it is different to have an attitude. Impression, perception, and attitude are three different levels. The first impression of a person can be different from the perception that you would develop after meeting this person 4 or 5 times. And after knowing this person for a few years, the attitude that you have towards this person would be entirely different. So those are some of the things. And then we also talk about the theory of social learning, as in, how do people learn? People learn either by observing or by copying. When they learn by observing, what is it that they observe? Like, it could be your favorite hero, you would like to have the same hairstyle or the same way of talking or the way of walking, the gait, anything. So this is the theory of social learning, which talks about how people learn observed behavior, and how you're learning from observation, and how something which has been thrust on you, which you have been the kind of education that has been imparted to you, how you have been told about what is the right way of eating, what is the right way of talking. So those are all learned behaviors, and the theory of social learning talks about that. Having spoken about this, we also have the theories that are largely dealing with media and society, like technological determinism. So it was first given by Veblen, and and Marshall McLuhan. Both of them together were working on a project whereby they started talking about how the world is a global village, how medium is very important. So what kind of medium, what kind of which TV channel do you trust? So that medium is the message. You trust the message of a particular medium depending on that, and how technology determines things. Technology, like we talk of deep fakes. What are deep fakes? They make things appear so real that you can be fooled by somebody. So the theory talks about hard determinism. It talks about soft determinism. So how people align themselves in accordance to technology, and how do they align with technology and the effects of technology that they create. And soft determinism greater talks about the greater flexibility that a technology helps you enjoy. So it could be the guiding force in human evolution, but it can also be a very minuscule factor. So depends on the kind of credibility people enjoy, the channel or the medium enjoys with people, you know. And then we also talk about media and public sphere. uh, when I talk about the media and public sphere, we talk about the concept where certain hierarchy was established in society. So when we are talking about public sphere was defined as, by Habermas, it was defined as something in which there are no hierarchies, right? And it is open to all citizens. It is open to feedback by people, and the discussion that takes place is not pertaining to one single individual, but on social issues that concern everyone. And then there is a formation of public opinion, whether we should adopt this policy as a nation or not. That kind of things. And then the citizen involvement in policy making was deemed to be important and essential. Why? Because the idea of having public sphere is to discuss things that are going to affect and impact a large number of people. So while these people are being impacted, it is very much their right to opine on it, and the feedback should be taken by the government, should be recultivated in the policy, after which the policy should be brought out. So Habermas talked about this kind of a public sphere for the first time. So this was the first time that audiences were considered to be more powerful. Why? Because it was not just in terms of physical spaces. It was also in terms of the public sphere was thought of as people's minds, how people talked to others, how people say, how people exchanged their ideas, how do they interact with each other, etc. So all of it together formed public sphere. After this, we come to audience theories. And audience theories largely talks about, um, okay, three kinds of theories, which are the hypodermic needle theory and the two-step and multi-step theories. When we say hypodermic needle theory, these were the kind of theories believed that people were sitting ducks, and media can do anything that it wants to do with them. So it talked about stimulus response, that media or the action, the media content is the stimulus, and the response is what people produced. So they ran away from their homes because they heard the War of the Worlds, something like that. So this was also talked about as hypodermic needle theory. So hypodermic needle is the doctor's needle through which a doctor injects something into the body of a human being. So it was looked from that perspective, that the medicine is injected into the body of the audiences, and the audiences are too weak to do anything about it, and they will produce the necessary reaction. Now, this is a dodo theory largely, but with the coming of social media, it is finding life again, because we do see that a lot of social media is leading to mob lynching and whatnot. People even committing suicides because they're being trolled, and because people are they're not getting to find their voice. So this theory is coming up one more time with the advent of social media. And then we have the two-step theory, which talks of the information haves and information haves not. So it talks about opinion leaders and opinion followers. So people who are the opinion leaders in their own sectors, and then there are others. These are the people who get information of any kind first. Because information is power, like we said in the earlier units. So if information is power, those who get it first are more powerful than the rest, because they will then percolate the message in the way they like to the information followers. This is the two-step theory. And the multi-step theory says that this is a network. Like I can be your opinion leader on communication, but maybe you can be my opinion leader on, say, for example, technology or fashion or something else. So everybody can be everyone else opinion leader in their own areas of interest. So this is a highly networked society. Okay. With that, we come to the end of this unit on media theories. Our last unit for the day that I am going to talk about is the research, mass communication research, and how it takes place. How many of you have done research projects before? Research projects of any kind in your bachelor's or master's? Okay. One, two. Anyone else? Three, Kavish. All right. Four, Nupong. Okay. All right. So 4, 5 of you have at least done it. Good. Uh, Research in itself is a whole course whereby we look at the various uh, methods of research, how to do research, how to keep our efforts, our work unplagiarized, and to look at the statistical analysis, all those things together. But here, this is only a brief overview since this course is meant to give you an overview of all the disciplines that mass communication entails. So here we are going to look at how what is research and what are the basic principles and the basic process of doing research. So I will not delve, since so many of you have already done research projects. I would depend on you to read through this unit and look at how development of mass media research has taken place. What are the objectives? What is the nature of research? What do we mean by research? What is the motivation for doing it? Those are the things I would not factor into. Instead, I would look at you know, the scientific approaches of mass communication research. When I look at the scientific approaches, it is the various steps of scientific research, of theories, of predictions that we are talking about. So we basically begin with something that we are very curious about and which can find its roots in mass communication, either through technology or through the media that we're studying or through the audiences who is a part of it. So once we have determined our topic, we go on to making certain assumed guesses, assumed no, informed guesses. Now, this is what comes up when we have done certain reading on that subject and we know where the world has moved. So today we know that certain kind of research has already been done on, say, for example, social media or on television or on alternate media, which is developing on YouTube. So how you can develop an informed guess, which will be your hypothesis on a certain topic that you've chosen. Once that has been done, some data gets collected, it is analyzed, and observations are made. And then you also run it through the assertions of any theory which has become your theoretical framework. So that is how broadly, research is done. Now, when we look at the types of research, it can be applied, it can be basic, it can be descriptive, it can be analytical. There can be various kinds of researches. When we talk about descriptive researches, these are the researches which come into picture when something is more new as compared to the rest. So this is the kind of research that you would like to delve into if you're trying to describe the process of how something is happening, what is happening, or how it is affecting something. There you need to describe. That's descriptive. As compared to this, when we are talking about analytical research, something is already well established. We know that big data is going to stay and that industries, companies, businesses are going to make use of it to understand that its customer base better. Right. So when you look at the analytical aspects of it, you try and analyze that out of this kind of demographic and psychographic data, what meaning can I create? So that is called analytical, where you are analyzing something. If certain kinds of audiences are more inclined to buy a semi-automatic washing machine as compared to an automatic washing machine, what is the reason? Is it that this maybe the automatic machine uses more water? Is it that it uses more electricity? Is it that it is not very sturdy and long lasting? What are the factors that push people to buying more semi automatic than automatic? One. The second thing is applied or and basic research. Now, the basic research is the more preliminary sort of research. It is something that requires less money, more of, let us say, academic kind of research, as compared to this applied research. So when we do researches, we propound certain theories. These theories get tested. If I say that audiences are attracted more if you talk to them by way of numbers, there's so many people in Delhi or so many people in India would prefer this. That is going to impress the educated audiences more. If I come up with this theory, the action research or the applied research, which could be through advertising, the advertising agencies are going to put this to test and create their own advertising, the researchers for advertising campaigns. So that is applied research. Then, of course, there's also something which we know as qualitative and quantitative, though, of course, in media research, so also as other qualitative researches, new softwares have come which are able to give numbers to quality as well. So when I say qualitative approaches, it could be case study or interview or focus group discussions and stuff like that. But this too can be quantified with the help of softwares. So the thing which was missing in qualitative was that it was thought that this is the perception of a limited few number of people. Now when we are able to statistically put numbers to it, it has become stronger, right? So qualitative and quantitative, as the name suggests, qualitative is something which are based on these kind of methods, and quantitative could be survey, could be content analysis, could be a way of collecting things by means of numbers. Like when I say now content analysis is a method which is both qualitative as well as quantitative. When I start measuring the amount of space that a news gets in a newspaper, it is quantitative. But when I'm looking at whether it is more whether it has a certain slant to it, or whether it is excuse me, please give me a moment. Just a moment. Yeah. So, what was I talking about? I was talking about qualitative and quantitative. Yeah. So, quantitative could be, yeah, I was talking about content analysis, which is both qualitative and quantitative. So, while when we measure space, it becomes quantity. When we are looking at what kind of slant it has, whether the news is balanced or not, whether it is pro government or anti government or neutral, whether it is hard news or soft news, then it is qualitative. So there can be methods which are both qualitative and quantitative. You need to understand according to the requirement of your research, according to your objectives and research questions, whether you want to delve into qualitative techniques or the quantitative ones. And there is something called triangulation, by way of which you make use of two methods, one qualitative, one quantitative, so as to strengthen your research more. So, having spoken of this, okay, there are a few more things that we need to run through quickly. And this is selection of topic. How do we select a topic? It depends on a few factors like whether a topic is relevant today or not. So, say, for example, use of radio. We all know that podcasts have replaced the commonly used radio now. So, and audiobooks have replaced them. So, if you're looking into effectiveness of radio still, probably you are not going to create something very meaningful, or you're not going to add to the knowledge bank. Precisely, if you're going to test how much do school children accept podcasts, or how much do they connect to it, or little children who are into learning languages, Are podcasts an effective medium for them, or audiobooks an effective medium for them when they're learning phonetics? Those kind of researches will be better, will be more relevant in today's times. So relevance is a factor which helps you decide your topic of research. Also the feasibility. If you're an academic researcher, you cannot obviously have the kind of money that an advertising agency has when it runs its researches. So you should know where to limit yourself. And the broadness. So you shouldn't be researching on where the sun rises in the east or west, but you should definitely be researching on what is that little factor, which does not let children absorb vitamin D despite playing in sunlight. Right. So, what sort of a question are you picking up for research? How broad or how narrowed down are you making it is also going to cost you its effectiveness. Then, all right, now there are a few research methods that have been explained in this, and since all of you have done researches at preliminary levels, you would know these, I believe, and I would request you to go through these. And in case there is a problem when we meet again the next week, you may ask me these methods. Like they're talking about the survey method, which is a quantitative technique. You all understand what a survey is. Content analysis, I just spoke to you about. Observation method is another, also called ethnography. And these are of two kinds. It can be participatory or non-participatory. When we talk about participatory observation method, it would mean that you become a part of the community that you're observing, and then you take your data. And a non-participatory one would be that you just sit down there and you observe what people are doing, how people are behaving, what's going on, and you make your own notes. So that's participatory and non-participatory. And this is also now getting into the newer ways of doing observation these days is netnography. So ethnography. One example could be, because I have just I've written a book on OTT platforms, and we were studying how Netflix people communicate with them. Netflix people communicate with their audiences, and what kind of comments do audiences have for them, and what kind of, in comparison, how Amazon talks to its audiences, and whether it makes it interactive enough the way Netflix does, as compared to these. What about the homegrown OTT platforms? So we wrote a book on this, and and these were some new methods that emerged on basis of which we've written this book. We've done some researches which talk about net ethnography. So on the internet, how are you observing people's behavior, people's reactions, use of emojis, how how aggressive they get online, and what fuels their aggression. So those are the kind of things that have been talked about. And with this, okay, there is one more small method, which is historical method, which we mainly use when we are going to document something, also called as a documentation method. Usually people who are working in the sector of archaeology or doing historical researches make use of this. Say for example, if people like us, the media people, are going to make use of documentation method, it would be to look at policies. Say for example, HR policies in media organizations. It could also be to look at the way marketing efforts are being made, in rural India, or in rural belts, or in places where non-English speaking places, native language press, how it is growing. Those kind of things need to be documented. So there we make use of documentation or historical methods. And later on, there are some sampling, like probability and non-probability sampling, which I can talk to you about in the next class when we meet up. And with that, we will be coming to end of this first block. Please go through, especially the unit on research. And if there is something that you do not follow, I'd like to begin my class with the questions first. And as far as whatever we've discussed today in the first block, if there is something that you have to ask or some clarifications that you would seek, please feel free to ask right now. You can unmute yourself and ask one by one, after which we can end the class for today. And I'll meet you again the next week. So questions, please. Either everything is clear or people haven't followed much. They've slept through the session. Which one of it is true? All right.
Yeah. Yeah. Hello.
Yes, you're audible.
Yes. For me, we are quiet because you were very clear and audible, and so we were following so much. Your presentation was so good. So just wish that this material will be shared with us so that we can go through it, and then we'll make use of it. Thank you so much for being.
Perfectly fine. Thank you so much. And with that, we end our session today. And please go through the material which will be uploaded on your LMS. And in case you have questions, I'll be more than happy to answer all of them. See you in the next class then. Bye-bye from India.
Bye-bye from Ghana.